What is going on, fam? Welcome back to the channel. In this box, I have a very special and unreleased pair of New Balance football boots that actually match these bad boys up here. Let's get into it. So huge thanks to Boots for a Ton who sent these out to me. These are a pair, of course, as you guys have probably seen from the thumbnail, is the New Balance 442 version 1 Pro USA Special Edition 9.5 US. Now, I don't actually know if these were ever released to the general public. Little thank you, Boots for a Tongue. Says, thanks, Noah, enjoy. Very, very cool. So go check them out on Instagram as well. I'll put the link down in the description box below. So here we go. So this is a little bit of a makeshift one because these ones obviously didn't come with a box. Oh yeah, ladies and gentlemen, look at these. Little flag on the back as well. Yeah, these are freaking awesome. These are definitely a collection boot. This probably isn't a play boot, like a boot that I'm going to play in. I'd rather go for a newer New Balance 442, but goodness, these look awesome. Okay, let's get the other one out of the box as well. These, of course, did not come with a string bag because the original 442 nor the new 442 neither come with string bags. So we'll get this box out of the way. Let me see. Struggling a little bit here with this bubble wrap. Okay. Bang. All right. New Balance 442, Special Edition USA. I believe these were unreleased. I'm almost positive these never got actually released to the public. A pro player might have been seen wearing these, but to be honest, I cannot remember. So the New Balance 442 1.0 Pro, which of course the 2.0 is now in full production, these were introduced in July 2018, which blended kind of classic design with modern tech to cater to players seeking sort of that traditional aesthetic, which obviously this really does provide, alongside some contemporary performance features. So you've got a much thinner and synthetic tongue area with some nice padding on it. You've got a fairly lightweight construction. Obviously the 2.0 is very, very lightweight in comparison to the competitors. This one actually came with kangaroo leather as well. So this entire forefoot here from this seam and that seam all the way forward was K-leather in the forefoot. It's not super premium K-leather, but it is K-leather nonetheless, so you are going to get a nice plush fit and feel on feet. And then you have a lightweight mesh lining on the inside, which you guys will see with the Pro Blends. You've got a die-cut EVA insert on the inside, on the insert, which also happens to be, yes, an American flag, which is absolutely freaking awesome. Very, very nice there. Pretty plush, to be honest, and it's got some heft to it. Not necessarily weight, but definitely a lot of plushness, which I think will be pretty comfortable under feet as well. I actually never tried on the New Balance 442 Generation 1 or version 1 this gen, just because it was it was just one of those boots that never really crossed my path. In 2018, I was finishing up my college degree playing for Whitman, and then I went straight to Spain and played in Spain for about half a season before getting kicked out of the country. So during that time, as you can imagine, it was pretty chaotic, and I was wearing my trusty Hypervenom Phantom 3 lows and nothing else because my brain did not have the space to think about football boots back then. Well, it did. I thought a lot about football boots, but there was a shop that we went to that I used to go to on a pretty regular basis that was in San Sebastian where I was living, and I almost guarantee they had the 1.0, but it never even crossed my mind because it was just like I was gung-ho on whatever the new Venom series was going to be. So Hypervenom Phantom 3 back then in 2018 when these guys launched. So other features of this football boot, it's a conical stud configuration, very similar to the version 2, although this one seems to be a lot more stable and sturdy than the version 2, which is kind of interesting because that would mean that they went backwards a little bit on responsiveness and excuse me, and rigidity here through the midfoot, because that is that is really, really rigid. And then you've got a decent amount of snapback. It's not amazing, but there is enough flexibility where I think the sole plate actually might be pretty enjoyable to wear. Obviously, conical studs are going to make it very easy to wear on both FG and AG surfaces, which is great. And then this, of course, is the USA colorway with the stars and stripes back on the heel area. And then they also came in a black with the white accents, white with black accents, blue with white accents, green with white accents, and red with white accents. So they came in a couple different, pretty vibrant colors, which is really cool. Now, what's really special about this pair of football boots, and one of the reasons why I really wanted them, is because it's going to perfectly complement the first generation Tim Weah boots that I have here. So as you can see, red, white, and blue across the board. Very, very cool. Obviously, this generation of football boot came out a lot later than this one. This one was like a 21 or a 22 release. These ones are very special to me because it was one of the first special edition boots that a brand reached out and gave to me. This is a special edition, not because of the colorway. This colorway was released in this football boot when Tim Weah got this colorway. But the cool thing about this is they never actually made it for the public in a high top laceless construction. Everyone else who has this particular football boot has it in the low top laced model. So that's really cool. And this is a very, very special pair of football boots that doesn't exist in public, and nor do these. So the fact that there are two USA, which obviously that's where I'm from, so special place in my heart, Team USA, and they are both very cool. Similar vibes, similar patterns, and just a really cool combo to have. So I'm very excited for the having both of these in the collection. I think these are going to be just really, really awesome. And no, they're not uber valuable. They're not this particularly, it's a New Balance 442. They were a budget-friendly football boot back in 2018. They're a budget-friendly football boot now. And this has no intrinsic value other than the completely subjective value that this pair of football boots has to me. And I really like these. And that's why I bought them from Boots for a Ton. So let's jump into the on-feet portion of the video. We'll talk a little bit about how these fit in comparison to some of the other budget-friendly football boots on the market today, and then of course how it compares with the newer generation of 442, which I don't believe, no, I do not have any New Balance 442 2.0s, sad. But we will talk about how they fit in comparison to those, and then of course some of the other budget-friendly options on the market. And then these are gonna take their place probably right next to these ones somewhere in the boot wall, because I do think that these are super, super cool. So let's hop into it. All right, fam, out here in the backyard with, of course, the USA New Balance 442 version 1. Now these are a half a size larger than I usually would go on the 442 because I haven't actually worn the 442 1.0, and because this is a special edition. I don't really care that much about the sizing and the fit and the comfort because these will probably just live on my boot wall, but it is a boot that I wanted to get close enough to my sizing that I could at least give you guys an impression of what they are like on feet. So here you go. Absolutely awesome. Love the detailing here in the back. And to be honest, they're pretty subtle for the most part. If you were to come out with this type of colorway with the red, white, and blue, and you didn't have this USA tab that was pretty obvious on the back, I probably would have said, yeah, these are a nice colorway to begin with. And of course, then they have the red, white, and blue on the sock liner. But that's because they are the USA model, which is awesome. All right, getting my feet in the 442 1.0. Nice. There you go. Okay. So they are pretty comfortable. As I said, they are a half a size longer than I would have usually gone. And you can see, you can see right there, there is a little bit of extra space. This is probably a boot that I would have worn if I was to buy the 1.0. I probably would have bought this boot true to size. You also have the lace loops, which I am going to do as well, because that lateral side is going to poke out like crazy if I don't do the runner's knot. It is cool that they do have the runner's knot as well, but that just gives, there you go. You can see that kind of pulling this area up into my ankle, much tighter, much more snug, which is really nice. But there you go. All right, we'll just single knot it for this time. But yeah, it is definitely a little bit long, which does mean that the width and everything else actually fits perfectly, in my opinion. So yeah, very, very comfortable football boots with too much room in the forefoot, which is to be expected for a boot that is a half a size longer. But as I said, half a size longer because these aren't meant to be, for me, these are a boot that I would happily play in if the circumstance kind of came up, but this is definitely a boot that I plan to pretty much just leave on my boot wall. But I do want to do this on feet because I do think these are going to be an absolute banger on feet from a comfort perspective, but also from just a vibe perspective as well. So the New Balance 442 version 1 is different from the version 2 in a couple different ways. Let's just assume that we're talking about the K-leather model of the version 2 because this is that's like the most direct comparison with this one, simply because they've now gone to a synthetic forefoot. This is a synthetic midfoot as well, so it's like their New Balance's faux leather here on the midfoot, which is the same as the first generation of version 2, if that makes sense. So version 2.0 as opposed to 2.5. The 2.5 generation they just came out with, all the new colorways are now synthetic as opposed to leather in the forefoot, and I would say that these ones fit very similarly. The kind of the interesting padding area behind the heel of version 2 doesn't exist on this one, and I honestly think it's better in the version 1. I think the heel area is a little bit more comfortable, and there's no weird rubbing, there's no, none of those heel pad blister issues that a lot of people complain about with the New Balance 442. The leather seems to be pretty similar from a softness perspective. As you can see, I can wiggle my toes just fine. The leather is definitely a little bit thicker than the second generation, which is, I don't know, that's kind of up to you whether you like a thicker one or a thinner one. I tend to prefer a little bit thinner leather, but on a boot like this that sits kind of in the budget category, I don't think a lot of people are going to care. They just care that it's leather and that it gives you that nice plush, soft, moldable feel around your foot. The other major difference between the generation 2 that I really enjoy and this generation is the sole plate. Now it is, I don't know if it's noticeable on here on camera, but it genuinely feels like a running shoe as far as how it feels like it's pushing my foot forward up onto the toes. It actually feels like, if you guys know running shoe terms, basically they talk about like the amount of rock a shoe has, so how much the shoe kind of goes bink and really like pushes you forward and propels you forward. And then they also talk about stack height, and stack height is the amount of material or foam that's in the back compared to in the front. And if they've got a really big stack height, it often means that the shoe is basically built like this. So there'd be way more foam in the heel area than there is in the toe. What that does is it sort of, as you toe strike, it really accentuates that push-off motion that you get from a running shoe. Why am I explaining this to you? Well, in comparison to the second generation, this sole plate feels like it's got a heel lift in it. And I don't think, from the things that I read on the New Balance website and all the other materials that I did for researching on this video, which wasn't a whole lot to be honest, because the New Balance 442 is a pretty simple football boot, it literally feels like there's a 5mm or 10mm stack height in the heel area, because it really does feel like I'm being propulsed and pushed kind of in that forward motion, stepping forward. So you can see the full look. They look really cool, red, white, and blue. Obviously with a white base, white football boots, especially in leather, look absolutely fantastic. So that stack height is a really interesting sensation on feet, because the version 2.0, and I'm sure the 2.5 as well that just came out with the synthetic, is the same sole plate, and those were pretty grounded. Yes, there's a little bit of that roll forward, but they feel pretty balanced and pretty grounded. This one feels a lot more kind of, as I'm running, it really feels like it wants me to kind of push off my toe and push forward, which is actually kind of a cool sensation, not too dissimilar from the DS Lite X-Fly 5 and X-Fly 5 Special Edition that I've reviewed a couple different times now, because it's got that beautiful little rock to it, which I actually really like, because when you're doing lateral cuts, you can't really feel it all that much. The Asics, what am I thinking of? Swift Strike. The Swift Strike has a 5mm heel lift, and yes, those are a little bit different because they're synthetic and whatever, but just as a comparison, the DS Lite X-Fly 5 and the Swift Strike have a very similar sensation, even though the X-Fly 5 doesn't have a heel lift. These ones are also pretty similar in the sense that they feel a lot like the Swift Strike in that it feels like you're up on your toes. Lateral stability isn't compromised by having that tiny little forward stack height push, but it does feel like I can really get propulsion moving forward, which is actually really interesting. And I kind of wish they had kept that on the second generation because I really think it adds to the comfort of the football boot just in general. Underfoot, basically from this point where you'd kind of push off, this point down to the heel feels incredibly comfortable. It's very plush, it's very grounded, and I'm actually quite surprised at the comfort level of these in comparison to the second generation, which is also very good, but I mean, these are really comfortable. Now, from a touch on the ball perspective, exactly what I'd expect from a boot like this. Very plush, very soft, not quite Copa Icon level, but I would say on par with the new Copa Gloro 2, which has kind of a nice balance of soft leather, but not too thick and plush and kind of annoyingly cushy, if you will. I think the Copa Icon is definitely in that category of boots, with potentially a couple of the Diadora models of being so thick that it's a little distracting because you don't really have that nice close touch on the ball, which is what I'm looking for. Even when I pick a boot like this out of my collection to go play in, I want something that at least I can feel that ping when I make, a diag ball or whatever. I want a little bit closer control, but with these, you kind of get that nice balance of soft leather. As you can see, it's like very, very soft, which is awesome. And then you have all the benefits of that kind of forward propulsion movement that you're getting with a boot like this. So I'm honestly pretty impressed with the way these feel. They are very, very nice, and I'm pretty impressed with how overall these fit, even in comparison to the second generation, which, as you guys know, I really enjoy, and for a long time took the crown for the budget king. Gloro 2 came in and took that mantle, at least for now. But I do think that this is a very, very good football boot, and that's going to wrap up today's video of the USA model, the Stars and Stripes model of the New Balance 442 1.0. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you guys are looking for some discount codes on the best footballs on the market or the best grip stocks on the market, I have partnered with both companies, Mitre and WeFoot, respectively, so you guys can find some discount codes down in the description box below for some new apparel and equipment. As always, be awesome. Take care. I'll see you guys in the next video.